By now, I think it's pretty easy to see that education has got some serious problems. I myself had worked in elementary education, and so I have some firsthand experience with the American education system. But this isn't just about the American education system per se. This is something more cultural and generational that I see taking place regarding our collective capacity to reflect and concentrate. Generation Z, in particular, seems to be addicted to TikTok and unable to hold their attention long enough to watch a movie without, at the same time, being on their phones and playing a video game while chatting on social media. I say this not to ridicule them. I do much of this myself now. But I also have a different background experience. I fortunately went to college and grad school before social media really took off, and I didn't have high speed internet or full-time internet on my phone until I was about 35, which meant I spent my 20s and my 30s still reading books and using a basic dumb phone rather than using a lot of electronic devices to study or having a smartphone on me at all times. And I can tell you there's a huge psychological difference. I used to go to the park with one or two books that I had to read for school. I would take a notebook and my dumb phone, and on my dumb phone it cost me about 10 cents a text. So I really only used it for emergencies. I would sit there, I would read my books, I would write my thoughts, and when my attention got fatigued, I would take a break and walk around the park. In this process, I would meditate, I would look at the trees, I would look at the sights. Sometimes there were swans and ducks around, and I would look at them. In hindsight, these are now some of the best times of my life. They allowed me to engage in some very dense and demanding philosophical texts. Today, I find that 10 times more difficult to do. I cannot read that the same way and with the same focused and long-term concentration that this provided me. When I do take a break, it turns into an hour, 2 hours screwing around on social media. So this particular psychological environment, which I was intellectually formed in, had great advantages that I don't think that the younger generations do, advantages that I then took for granted. And the whole time I was looking forward to one day having iPads and one day being able to record things. I did not foresee the amount of distraction that those things would bring with them. So today it feels like putting in 2 hours of solid reading is an accomplishment. Before, it wasn't uncommon for me to spend 6 hours. And on a good day, I could even do up to 8. This is all to say that I'm not trying to disparage the younger generations with what I'm saying. I think something has been taken from them, and it's been the product of a totalitarianism of technology. As someone who also makes YouTube videos, I am forced to confront this in a different way as well. I know if I make anything over 3 minutes, I'm going to lose a large part of the audience. The attention span simply isn't there, and there are too many other options to be spending one's time with, while the algorithm has increasingly disincentivized long-form videos. So that means if I want views or I want to feel my time spent making a video was more than a personal exercise, I have to appeal to an audience who, just like me, has been conditioned by this new psychological environment to move to the next thing as soon as the dopamine buzz comes down. This also incentivizes me as a creator to speak with a new form of arrogance. Since if I don't sound 100% confident and authoritative about what I'm saying, someone else will do the same. They will present themselves as far more informed on this subject, no matter how stupid their ideas are. This incentivizes the creator to make superficial videos, empty videos, because substance is not what's sought for. A strong presentation and stimulation is what's sought for. These same algorithms and processes that make it hard for me to read a book incentivizes me to make idiotic content for others who struggle to read a book. And this creates a theme I'll come back to about a feedback loop. This feedback loop is formed where Any desire or ambition that the creator, myself, has to produce something of substance, it will ultimately be confronting a constant state of futility, since the whole time the audience has its impulses and its appetites constantly calling out for them to go look at something else on TikTok. And these gratifications, these immediate gratifications, make it more difficult for me as a creator to try to insert anything of profundity, because I'm working in this constant tension that my efforts are going to be measured against the cost of watching something else on TikTok that is more immediately gratifying. Even the tone of my voice and my editing, I'm always aware of how boring I am within the first 30 seconds. I know with this very intense sensation that, or awareness that I have to be performing constantly because someone else is. And so this is one of the effects of living in an attention economy. Attention has to be fought for. Even if I were in the same room with you and your phone, I would still be competing with your phone. So there's always a million strangers out there who are competing for your attention. I could even be your brother or your sister. I'm still competing with a million other strangers. A million strangers who have no interest in hand about your life and about what's truly happening with you, or have any commitment to your flourishing. So we share our attention these days with people solely motivated by market forces, people who will console you with any lie, or who will say what any kind of comforting thought, ideological idea that you want to hear out of someone else's mouth. They will facilitate that because that gets them more clicks. So for the creator, this means if I have anything I think is worthwhile to say, I feel this tension to filter it out. I have to think that I might be losing someone's attention because I'm competing with someone who will tell you what you want to hear. This complexity that thought sometimes requires, or the slow burn of a meditative reflection, becomes for the consumer in the attention economy a bad customer service. I am not offering you, the customer, what you want. And so you are not immediately gratified, and there are 100 other vendors out there who will gratify you, and I lose you. This idea that might challenge you, or an idea that would inspire you to do something more difficult, now has to be challenged against being laborious and boring. And the failure on my part as a creator, because I'm not finding a way to make it easier for you as the consumer to consume. This creates a reconfiguration of what are relevant voices in public. Relevant means that which serves the consumer, the customer, the one giving the commodity of attention to the creator. Authority becomes defined by those who say what you, the consumer, want to hear, rather than any profundity of knowledge or any maturity of ideas, a maturity that might be brought about through a long process of fermenting knowledge into wisdom, a process which can require years of critical reflection and revision. Now, I'm not claiming I have all of this. I'm just saying there is a huge difference between a consumer receiving what they want to hear and somebody who has produced some idea or thought that is not produced within a consumeristic marketplace. So, metaphorically, technology has given us abundance of water in the form of knowledge. These floodgates of knowledge are now surrounding us, but there's barely a glass of wine to intoxicate us with wisdom. This has been furthered by the TikTokification aesthetic, where a conversation has to be presented in the form of a hot take with little nuance, as I was mentioning earlier, the kind of arrogant presentation that everything has to be presented in. The person who can speak the fastest and without pausing is seen as more genuine, more authoritative, while the person who maybe makes a few mistakes, pauses, has to think for a moment, they're eating up airtime. This is the attention currency, which causes the person who reflects, who thinks things out, to be looked at as untrustworthy, calculating. So this process ends up inverting the cardinal virtue of prudence into a vice, and impulsiveness into a virtue. The transmutation of values makes self-control and intellectual discipline the sign of dishonesty. If I'm not speaking off the cuff, emotionally, and with a sense of arrogance, I'm not looked at as authentic. This infinite novelty that TikTok provides leads us to find the most extreme ideas and radical takes or emotional outbursts to be perceived as the most honest people. And anyone offering something profound or complex, ideas that require cognitive effort, this is looked at as a defect on the part of the creator. If it can't be simplified, it shouldn't be consumed. It has to be presented within 30 seconds or less, and there has to be no cognitive effort. Otherwise, it is the creator who has failed. Anything rigorous, anything challenging, anything not immediately gratifying has failed to be what the consumer demands. And in a consumer economy, the consumer is always right, at least in sales. But it's precisely the consumer who can never be wise, because wisdom is not a product. It's not content. I hate that word so much. Whenever I started making YouTube videos, when people were saying you're making content, what the hell are you talking about? You're making content. You're either making something of value, you're making knowledge, you're generating knowledge, you're creating media, but content. It's just such a consumer word. Because something that can be packaged is content. It's in the word itself. And so if it can't be packaged, if it doesn't have some visceral ACMR experience to it, the person can't digest it. Instead, the consumer mind always lacks the interior structures that are born of rigor, discipline, and cognitive effort. For example, if you took algebra or went through the laborious process of doing algebra, you know that algebra creates cognitive structures. You start to see things and pull things apart differently. And you might get the concept the first time, or maybe the third time, but you actually have to go through the rigor of doing the math numerous times before that structure is built into your brain. We don't want to do that anymore. That's not how a consumer good is given. I have to give it to you in 30 seconds or less. And it has to not require any kind of build-up on your part, any kind of homework, any kind of rigor on your part. To be a consumer good, one must acquire it through a different mode of being. The consumer is then, in a way, always condemned to be an idiot. If you only exist as a consumer, you will never build the structures that will allow you to actually think. Only when one can exist as something other than a consumer can one begin a path towards wisdom. Meaning, until you can build cognitive structures on history, on math, on philosophy, theology, whatever you want, sociology, and until you can hold those formulas as reflective in your own thinking process, you can't wrestle with more complicated ideas or listen to more complicated thoughts. And so here's the rub. Our whole culture in society is based on consuming, and so condemns us to this idiocracy, this totalitizing force where if it's not consumable, well, then it's not worthwhile. And if it's not consumable, then its intellectual value is of no merit. And so why should someone produce it? There's no one there to consume it. And so the individual has to constantly fight against being a consumer, because we have ads in every email, in every text that dings, every video you watch or song you hear. The subtext is always consume more. You're not going to listen to a rap song without them citing a bunch of name brands that you somehow have to have and be up on, cars that you need to be up on. You can't even enjoy your pastimes without being aware of all these consumer goods. And you can't watch a movie and get the references without understanding consumer goods. So the deeper subtext is that we demand only those things which lack wisdom, because only those things which lack wisdom are things which the industry can produce. So the movie's telling you buy more stuff, but even beyond that, it's telling you only be interested in things which can be produced by an industry. If it can't be produced by an industry, don't bother with it. And so this feedback loop cycles again. Idiots desire stupid things because stupid things keep them from engaging in difficult things like algebra or existential questions, which then creates a market for more stupid things, which can only be produced when there is a demand for them. And by producing them, they must avoid challenging, the creator must avoid challenging the consumer with anything requiring cognitive effort. And in that, they would lose their own incentive to produce anything, because the consumer who incentivizes them has now been conditioned to demand more stupid things. And so that which can't be packaged for the consumer mode of being, has no voice. What I mean is, in an attention economy, if attention is the currency, one's voice is only as loud as how much of that currency it can acquire or procure. The consumer mode of being, combined with an attention economy, cannot create rigorous minds with discipline and capable of cognitive effort. These washed out minds suffer not only a lack of education, but of freedom, because they lack an aptitude for problem solving. Not by IQ. I'm not saying this is an IQ problem. It's not even fully an education problem. It's just that we're now seeing it more and more a problem for education. That these kids are coming in with these inabilities to have just 30 minutes of concentration, of handling intellectual rigor, because they have to have that immediate. It has to be in a game form. It has to be, shooting coins up in the air and numbers that gratify them. You can't learn algebra in that process. And so they are retarded in their way of development. These structures never build. And I don't mean, retarded in the genetic sense, like Down syndrome. I mean, their development has been retarded. What potentially there is not able to develop. And so they are retarded in that sense. So this feedback loop then generates as a product a retardation, a structural retardation. Nor can they handle complex problems, because complex problems require intellectual rigor, discipline, and cognitive effort. And so they never have solutions to complex problems. And so complex problems become neglected. Life continues on even though these complex problems are constantly there. Like not cleaning your room. It's something that you have maybe the aptitude to do, but if you continue to neglect it, it becomes more and more of a problem. However, you can still live a very long time with a very unclean room. And so this leads to what I would call pragmatic stupidity, or actually I'm kind of borrowing this from another philosopher, which I'll come back to, but this pragmatic stupidity allows that as long as life is functional, we don't have to solve the complex problems. So these complex problems continue to fester, and they continue to cause needless suffering, They continue to cause existential meaningless, and they also continue to produce vapid, shallow personalities. But people can function with all of this. And so the stupidity continues to become a functional mode of being, which is then medicated or opiated through more consumerism. I can get through my stupid life as long as I can watch more stupid videos about cats or on TikTok. So a cumulative damage is acquired like a plaque, like a rot. All right, we call it brain rot now, right? Like the kids all have brain rot. And this leads in a bigger sense or in a macro sense to oppress us. We usually refer to this as like a systematic evil, as though, you know, this decay becomes a system, and this neglect becomes a system that it's an operative system. It works, but it's filled with decay and corruption. So this neglect, this pragmatic stupidity, is an idea that a German philosopher named Bonhoeffer had given based on his insights from Nazi Germany. And what he looked about in Nazi Germany was how people didn't need to be malicious for a system to do evil. All an evil system needs for it to continue to do destruction is to be functional, to be pragmatic, and to have these stupid people as cogs in the machine. So in a way, stupid people are almost more dangerous than malicious people, because when processing information becomes rigorous or too high friction, then honesty becomes too difficult. And so that corruption gets into the individual. So in our attention market, profound thinking becomes too costly. I can't write essays for free, read books for free. I need a return on investment, especially if I'm doing my YouTube videos or social media. The system incentivizes me not to do anything hard, which then falls back on me, that I'm not going through the rigor that I need to do. And I then produce stupid things for stupid people in order to get stupid prizes. And so I produce easy ideas with no demand on the attention of the consumer. The attention that decides if I have a voice is the attention of the consumer. And so if I want to talk about profound ideas, moral challenges, if I want to really grind away at trying to do the rigorous work of what is truth, I'm not going to have a voice in social media, because no one on social media is a recipient to that. I'm not going to get their attention. I'm not going to get their clicks. And so I am not going to receive the rewards. So I'm incentivized not to do that. This is how a systematic evil works. Scale it, and you see why we're in the place that we're in now with our society. So producing ignorance becomes rational, and a more efficient use of my time and energy is to produce ignorant content, to give emotional outbursts and hot takes and say the most radical things that will get the most clicks, or, you know, all the kind of like sexualized media that we have now. Yet, if I contribute to enough ignorance, then I help build systems of stupidity, systems that mobilize irrationality. And this is where I think we can agree our society has become obviously more irrational, in that stupid people used to shut up because they knew they were stupid. Now everybody wants to talk, and they don't have anything to say except their own emotional responses. And so all we're getting is this collective irrationality. And so this helps build an environment that causes me to suffer as the producer of this stupidity, as the person who feeds the ignorant. And so I then have to further suffer the stupidity and the irrationality around me, but I still need to eat. So the market demands that I make stupid content for stupid people, and so I have to feed stupidity in order to eat myself. So this is how stupidity becomes a social phenomenon. In French, we would say, l'enfer est pave de bonnes intentions. Yeah, my French is terrible, but everyone's French is terrible except for the French. But in short, the road to hell is paved on good intentions. It's true of good intentions that they lead us to hell if there's stupidity. The problem with this proverb is at some point you should realize that your good intentions are leading you to a bad place. But that's the problem of being an idiot. You're so broken by your own cognitive dissonance that you never see how the stupid thing you keep doing is only making things worse and worse and worse. And this is what I think has become our political problem. We have so many roads of good intentions filled with idiots who collectively trust the judgments of the collective rather than their own eyes, intuitions, judgments, and reason. We are in a cognitively retarded society of good intentions. But since we're also a democracy, it means we are collectively using our retarded cognitive powers to decide who governs us. And so once again, a feedback loop cycles. Now, stupid empowers stupid so that stupid can build more institutions that reify stupidity deeper into the system.